Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So, that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Lauren Kerstein. Lauren is the author of multiple books for children and adults. You might know her picture books like Remembering Sundays with Grandpa, Home for a While, or her Rosie the Dragon and Charlie books. She's here today to talk about her newest release, Hope Road. This picture book tells the true story of Kentucky's packhorse librarians, the extraordinary women who rode on horseback through the Appalachian Mountains during the Great Depression to deliver books to communities that had none. It went right to my book-loving heart, and I know it is going to go right to yours too, so let's get right to the episode. Lauren, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
Oh, of course. I feel like listeners should know when I first got the chance to look at Hope Road, my podcast calendar was full, and I thought I can't record another one. And then I read the book and thought we have to talk about this book. We have to have a conversation. So this is a bonus episode, and I am so excited to be able to bring it to everybody. And I'd love to start with your story. Tell us a bit about you and the work you do and the journey you've taken to children's literature to get to this book today.
Sounds good. And thank you. I was so excited to have a bonus episode. So, woo! If the listeners could see me, I'm doing a little dance. So I've always written. I'm one of those authors who's always written. When I was little, I used to make up stories singing around the tree in our front yard. I would write songs in my head. I wrote poetry for a long time. And as a therapist, mental health clinician, I was always telling stories. And because I specialized in autism spectrum disorders, I was always writing out what are little stories and little snippets to help. So one of my workbooks about sensory issues, one of my directors at the preschool I was working at saw it and said, "Why isn't this a book?" And I said, "Well, that's a great question. And, not very well-known secret, I write lots of fiction too." And she's like, "Lauren, do it." And so, the journey's long, as it was for the Packhorse Librarians, although not as treacherous. And I just kept pushing, pushing, pushing. And Rosie the Dragon was the first story fiction to hit the shelves. And my sensory book was the first professional book to, minus some chapters and articles, to get out there.
So it was the push, perhaps the push of a colleague to get you to go public with that writing and to take the journey.
Absolutely. So thank you, Amy, for that push.
So the book we're here to talk about today, Hope Road, is a book for everyone. It is a book for librarians, for educators, for parents, for caregivers, for book lovers, for adults, for kids, for anybody who has ever had a place for reading in their hearts. This book is for them. And I'd love for you, in your words, to give listeners a bit of what the book is about, although we've certainly alluded to it, and the inspiration behind why you chose to write about it.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said about the broad audience because I feel that to my core. I mean, we want to believe that all of our books are for everybody, sure, but that's not the case. But with Hope Road in particular, I really do feel like it will touch people's hearts on such different levels. So I'm going to take a side lane and then I'm going to come back to your question.
Okay.
When I grew up in Glen Rock, New Jersey, which is one of the many places I grew up, I used to go to the Glen Rock Library. And if you read a lot during the summer for their summer reading program, you got to get stars and you got to go into a facade that they built. And so then you got to enter a book facade, which was the one I remember the most was Alice in Wonderland. And I just remember that feeling of feeling transported. So it not only did it make me want to read more because it was all about, I wanted the payoff, but it made me fall in love with books. And then entering that facade was like nothing. I can't even describe the feeling. I still get that, like my heart is beating. And so when I read Jojo Moy's book, The Giver of Stars, and which is fiction, and saw at the end there was a tiny little paragraph because like all good book lovers, I read from cover to cover every word
Yes.
that's there.
The
There was
acknowledgments, all of it.
all of it. It's all part of the experience. So there was a teeny tiny paragraph that talked about how this was a real program. And I was stunned as this avid reader and author about this program. So I said something to a critique partner, Katie Frawley, and she was like, yeah, you need to write a picture book about this. So just for context, this was in November of 2019. So then we entered 2020. And in case anyone missed it, we might have had a global pandemic that began. And so I was both in survival mode and also looking for light. And this story was light. I could not stop reading books about it. I could not stop researching it. There were so many people who let me interview them. And so I just felt so passionately that this book about these brave women who rode in such treacherous, across such treacherous terrain, with the determination that they had to bring this gift of reading that I had experienced at the Glen Rock Library to people in rural Kentucky. It was just such a labor of love.
Yeah. True heroes, truly, of what they do.
Incredible, incredible. And if you go online, you can actually hear their voices. There are some recordings of some of the packhorse librarians, and one talks about how her feet froze to the stirrups of the horse because she had to, there were no roads, of course, they were traveling in creek beds, and it was so cold that her feet froze and she couldn't get them off out of the stirrup.
Unbelievable. I first found information about these pack course librarians through a fiction book as well. Not the one you read, but one that you do mention, which we'll talk about your author's note and acknowledgments at the end, because yes, I read until the very last word of your book as well.
Oh,
But
thank you.
the book woman of
Yes.
Troublesome Creek was
Oh,
my first
amazing.
introduction to these
Yes.
amazing people and thought,
Yes.
wait a minute, why didn't I know about this? I'm a
Yes.
40-something-year-old woman who loves books and I had no
Right.
idea. So I love that your picture book is bringing this this group of women, these heroes in the book world, to a younger age to really appreciate books at our fingertips are a luxury that
Yes.
some didn't have, that we have to remember that privilege. And I feel like that's such a gift to understand at a younger age as well.
I couldn't agree more. And Kim Michelle Richardson has shined such a beautiful light on this with all of her books.
Yeah.
I just pre-ordered her latest
I did too.
yesterday. Um, and yes, this is one of those really fine lines as an author because you don't want to come across as preachy and you don't want there to be a lesson.
Right.
But I so hoped that kids would see that there are people who don't have access like we do.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And that we need to truly appreciate that in all aspects of our lives, but in an aspect that they might not initially appreciate, which is books, and that the wonderful world that they open up. Now, your book in terms of the words on the page, you get lost in them. You have such a beautiful gift of having it progress as if it's a narrative about these people and the hardships and the complexities and the heroics of them. But then I can see where you talked about liking poetry. You have these beautiful mini poems throughout the book and the different formats that you chose, and some words are bold and some in capital. Tell me about how you decided to write this incredible narrative in such a beautiful lyrical way that is going to read like a wonderful story for a young reader, but as an adult who is going to appreciate the beauty of the different sets of words on each page too. I need you to tell me how you pulled that all together.
Oh, thank you. So this is an interesting story because it's not straightforward. The original version of this book was called My Brave Librarian, perhaps, and it was from the perspective of the horse.
Oh my goodness, wow.
And so it always had some lyricism. I think I can't, I mean, I have two different styles of writing, three different styles of writing, I think. I have my professional style.
Mhm.
I have my Rosie the Dragon and Charlie style, which is definitely my Jersey girl, sarcastic, like punny type style. And then I have this lyrical style that just lives in my heart. And
Mhm.
so it always had some lyricism. So for example, the opening line or some of the opening lines in that version, yes, my brave librarian, were our friendship didn't need words. We didn't have enough books for everyone, but it didn't matter. A few precious treasures were enough. So that was the initial feeling that I was going for.
Mhm.
And then I met with this amazing editor, Esther Kaja Harenga, who was at the time at Union Square, who's the one who published the book. And she said, what if you leaned into that lyricism? And it was like the floodgates opened. What? You want me to go back to my poetic childhood where I was writing poems? I mean, I have a notebook this thick, which the viewers can see, 2 inches thick
Yeah.
of poetry. And so I love wordplay and I love playing with words and I love finding just the right words. So the answer to your question is I had so much fun crafting a text that was lyrical, that touched on enough information so that I grounded the reader, the young child reader, but also didn't pull them out of the story. And I just had a blast. It went through 10 full rounds of revision after it was acquired. And when I say full, I mean like start on a fresh page.
Wow.
And part of what helps me with my lyrical write, part of what helps me with writing in general, but part of what really helped me with this particular book and with the lyricism is I write what I call word banks. So for any creators out there, I create a sheet where I divide it by theme, or like, for example, I wrote horse and I would write all the words that are associated with a horse and horseback riding, or mule. They wrote on mules as well. And then I wrote a historical context word bank. So what were all the things that were happening? And then I wrote a terrain word bank. What were all the terrain positives, negatives, challenges? And that really helped because then I had this beautiful body of words to choose from.
I'm totally stealing that idea for my own writing.
Yes,
Lauren.
it's fabulous. And I'd be happy to show you my word banks from this book. I do it for all my books. It makes such a difference. And so when you get lost, because we all do, when you get
Right.
lost in the revision or even in the crafting, initial crafting, it centers me back in what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of Lost, I loved all of the pages, but there is one particular spread that just spoke right to my book loving heart. Can I read that page out loud for listeners? Because
Yes.
knowing my audience of educators and librarians and caregivers, I feel like they're going to love this page too. And then we'll have to talk about these amazing illustrations after that. But here is the page that I adored. Ready?
Ready.
I could see your eyes like, oh, which one is it? Which one is it? With dry mouth, thick throat, and trembling legs, the librarian pushed forward until she discovered a door in. Visit after visit, librarians wove books and stories into the fabric of their neighbors' lives. And as literacy flourished, new ideas did too. This is the heart and soul of what I believe in my heart about my own work with kids, with teachers, with adults, is discovering that door in. There is a book for everyone that could literally change their life, change the whole game. And they wait patiently for us until we find them. And this page was just like that beautiful validation of what I do and what I believe and the magic that happens from one page with a slightly, what are you doing here? I don't know if I want you in my neighborhood kind of look to the kids are sitting with me and there is a book on my lap and my body is softer. It was just my most favorite spread.
Ah, I love that that's the one that you chose. I mean, that's what you also do with this podcast. And I'm not saying that to toot your horn. You introduce the world to other books that are out there that might be that book for that reader.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. It's also funny you pick that spread because of all the drafts, that spread was always there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it was always there for a variety of reasons, partly because I wanted people to see the resistance and the reluctance. And I don't like the word resistance, but it was fear. You know, we had people needed their kids to be working the farm. It was the Great Depression, money was scarce. So books were like, what? And the literacy rate was incredibly low for adults and for children. And so the librarians who came from that area, which was really the only reason anyone ever let them come through, had to find a way to connect. And that's what our books do. So it was so metaphorical and also literal that she had to find a way to convince this dad, this family, to let literature in. And so, it makes me so happy that you chose that spread.
And it was partly the words, of course, just the beautiful nature of your words that went right to my heart. But I do want us to shout out the illustrations in this book. They are gorgeous. Now, I know booksellers have just this magical ability to match authors with their illustrators to give us this experience. But the colors, the way that this was created, like this is real art, right? You can
Yes.
tell on the page it has that, it's hand drawn, hand painted. And I know everything is, but when we're talking about these amazing people kind of back in the day, these illustrations just fit so perfectly, yet remind us in the present that there is still the same power of books. So I'd love to give you a second to just shout out your illustrator and the amazing alchemy that happened in this book.
I would love to. So, Becca Statlander, who lives in Kentucky. So, her, and that was one thing we were really looking for. When we talked about illustrators, the landscape is its own character
Mhm.
in this book and in many books, of course. But in this book, the landscape is a character. We're talking about riding on steep mountains, up and down. One of the packhorse librarians used to say that the horse's legs were uneven because they were always leaning to the side to go up mountains. And Becca's art gives us such a rich view into what the landscape looks like. The emotional resonance came through in the way that she showed the librarian connecting. I was blown away
Yeah.
and so grateful.
Yeah.
I mean, it is truly a 50-50. picture books are 50-50, and we have to trust our editors, we have to trust our illustrators, and that isn't always easy to do. And Becca just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it's truly gorgeous. It's truly gorgeous and gives you all the feels, all the book loving
Yes,
feels
yes.
as you read the book.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Becca. I mean, just incredible.
Yes. Now, I also want to point out, because we both read books all the way to the end, right? You do have some beautiful end matter here after that stunning last page, which I will leave readers to get for themselves. You do have this lovely author's note that is divided by questions a reader might have and answers. You've got these beautiful, like, primary source pictures that are there to really give the feel. And then, of course, you've got um, credits, you've got the bibliography, you've got so much for someone like what happened with us with an adult fiction book that wanted to go down that rabbit hole. There is more to satisfy our curiosity here. So I'd love for you to talk about those elements in the book and why they were so important for you to include.
Yeah. So, hundreds of pages of research later, I was like, okay, I may have found this topic beyond fascinating and I could read every last book out there, but that doesn't mean every reader will.
Mhm.
But I also hopefully piqued interest with some of my references in the book. And so I wanted to include more information that would be interesting both to the reader who wanted lots more and also to the reader who just wanted to dip their toes in here and there. And my editors were instrumental in helping me with the format. I always wanted pictures and I always had similar content, but all of a sudden they were like, how do you make this more accessible? And that's where the questions came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was terrific editorial guidance. It was like a magical process writing this book with the editor. I worked with four different editors, but it just worked.
Yeah.
So I had to pick and choose what to include, which was very hard.
Hmm.
And I had to think with my kid brain, what would a younger reader and what would an older reader want to see? Because I also think this book caters to older readers, though
Definitely.
the poetic text takes it a bit out of the children's book world for readers who feel like they don't want to look like they're reading a kid book, which breaks my heart, but is certainly true.
Mm.
And then the back matter gives us a chance to explore the world impact that the packhorse librarians had. And that was at the end of the day, we truly wanted people to be able to wrap their arms around the fact that not only did librarians change lives during this short program, but it was a ripple effect that continues until today. I
Mhm.
mean, the Library Services Act came from a congressman who had been a teacher and received books from the Packhorse librarians and was so inspired that he wanted to make sure everyone could have access. So that's where the back matter came from. And then the pictures. Oh, I'm so lucky I got so many people were so generous with their pictures.
Yeah, and I loved especially the pictures of the scrapbooks from the librarians themselves. That is going to be my next rabbit hole after seeing the beautiful, almost like what are they called? Like the common. So there's a something common notebook, that just keeps track of everything, and to see their handwritten messages, their pictures, their recipes. I
Yes.
loved that aspect of that back matter as well.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, if you go on one of the websites I listed, and there are further references on my website, by the
Yeah.
way, um, but one of the websites, you can see picture after picture of the scrapbooks. And yeah, I mean, talk about a rabbit hole. 5 hours later, I'm like, oh, I should probably should function outside of my
Yes.
computer. They are incredible. And part of the scrapbooks were made out of books that were destroyed. And so one of the ways that they had to get all their own books. So the program started and they were told, go for it. They had to rent their horse or mule and they had to get all their supplies. They had nothing. And so one of the things that they did was cut holiday cards, Christmas cards, and into pieces for bookmarks. so that they could preserve the books and they weren't dog-eared. And then the books that did get destroyed, if they couldn't repair them, made it into scrapbooks. And the recipes, so one of the beautiful things about this program and about this, the Appalachian community, the media has not done any favors to rural Appalachia. I mean, it's really sad. And so I wanted to make sure that the people, the depiction of the people was what they were, which were tenacious and strong and truly incredible, remarkable people who just didn't have access. And so one of the things was that they were very proud and they wanted to do an exchange. And so when the books were delivered, oftentimes the only thing they could afford to give was a recipe.
Yes.
And so those made it into the scrapbook.
It's those
Scrapbooks. Yeah.
connections. It's those connections that just warm my heart. And I remember the word I was looking for, the commonplace notebooks, those
Oh,
notebooks
uh-huh.
of everything of the time.
Yes.
You also mentioned in your acknowledgments something else about representation and really being true to that in the book that I'd like to give you a chance to talk about here as well, because I found that to be a very powerful addition at the end of your book.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I am, if nothing else, is I am a perfectionist and I am a go-getter, and I don't stop until I finally get the information I'm looking for.
Mhm.
And for better for worse, that didn't happen till really late in the process of this book because I had to interview a bazillion people. And my question was, were there people of color were people of color included in this program, either as librarians or as patrons? In Jojo Moy's fictionalized book, she had a Black librarian, and that was a part of the conflict theme, challenge, etc. But I
Mhm.
didn't know if that was really true or if that was completely fictionalized. So, very long story short, since I don't want our listeners to fall asleep while listening to this, I interviewed so many people and I thought I found the answer. I found that picture that is in my back matter of people of color, a Black librarian reading to children of color. And I was like, hallelujah, even if nobody can verify the extent to which people of color were involved, I found my answer and now we can have representation in the illustrations, which is one of my big concerns. I want representation. I also, however, want to be historically accurate. And I finally got a hold of this incredible woman who is a librarian and who wrote a book about basically summarizing Black history and libraries because reading and libraries are not just something that people who are white want. It's something that everybody wants. And so Lynette, who was just so helpful as I dropped 52 books trying to pull something out to use as a reference, um, was just incredible. And I'm sorry, Raynette. Let me say her name correctly. Raynette F. Jones. And she said to me, you know what, Lauren? That picture isn't from the Packhorse Library program.
Mhm.
It's from a different work progress administration program called the Library Extension Services Program. And at first I was like, okay, I finally really got my answer because a lot of people were like, I don't know. I really don't know. That's a great question. And, some of the most famous books that are out there don't really address it. So anyway, I decided, called my editor and said, or emailed and said, we got a problem. We're going to have to change this. People of color were not a part of the Pack Horse program. And I feel like it's almost like reverse whitewashing it to say that they were.
Mhm.
And that's when I said, but I need to address it.
Yeah.
And so I addressed it in the back matter. But it was that was a very hard decision to make because I wanted representation, but I wanted accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah. And the picture, although the picture is still in your back matter, just not connected
Right.
to the pack horse librarians, which, as you mentioned, is historically accurate, but also, something that we can always do better on. So I feel like your honest account of that here is so important because that is our history and just reminds us of the work that we can still do with books and how they
That's
connect us
exactly
together
right.
in ways that
Yeah,
they may not have then, but they sure as heck can now.
absolutely. And you said that so well. And what's beautiful is that the library extension services had their own like pop-ups basically in all the different hollers. And things were very segregated then. So lots and lots of Black communities had a library extension service,
Mhm.
which hopefully will become a book someday that people talk about.
Ooh.
I have, not by me necessarily, but I'd love to. But
Yeah.
I would love if someone took that and ran with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for now, at least, I think Hope Road is probably the best love letter to libraries and librarians and books that we have. And so I'm so grateful that you came onto the podcast to talk about it. But can I ask if you have things in the works? You get to get sneak peeks of what other books might be ahead of you?
Absolutely. So I have four board books coming out this spring that I wrote for Creative Publishing Services. They were work for hire, and they're all about what I love talking about, which is social emotional. So it talks about bravery, talks about friendship, sharing. So that I'm very excited about. I got to write in rhyme, which was so exciting. And thank goodness I have a critique partner, Shannon Stalker, who is like the world's best rhymer ever. And so she was able to make sure my stressed and unstressed syllables were right. I've got a ton out on submission. I'm supposed to have a book coming out. Well, it was supposed to come out 2 years ago, so we'll see. Hopefully, it's coming out someday soon.
Okay.
Can't really talk much about it. And then I have a young adult novel that I just had so much fun writing that's been out on submission. So cross your fingers and toes that it gets picked up. And then I ghostwrite. So I have tons of ghostwriting projects I'm working on right now. Can't talk about them. I'm under an NDA, but
Right.
that's very fun and they'll be coming out soon. And then I am a creative coach. And so I have lots and lots of clients who have projects coming out that we've worked very hard on. So
Wow.
lots of moving parts, but nothing I can say specifically except the board books.
Yeah. That's okay. We don't mind KG. We don't mind that because now we can find you online and kind of stalk what's to come next and find out that way. So where is the best place to find you online so that we can do that?
So the best place to find me is at Lauren, Lauren, Kerstein, Kerstein.net. That is my website. I'm also on socials at Lauren Kerstein. When you visit my website, take a look at the Revision Week page. I run a revision challenge every year that is free. I love doing quick read crafty tips and helping people with their writing. So it's a free challenge. You're welcome to join. It usually takes place in August, September. And we have so much fun talking about revision and writing and tips and tricks and pacing and all the things.
I will be there. Okay. I will put links to your website, to your social media handles in the show notes. Of course, I will put links to Hope Road in the show notes. And I just want to thank you again for coming on and just having a book love conversation today. It was wonderful.
Ah, thank you. My love letter to librarians is the real deal. And I just want to say to everybody listening, thank you for being here. You are helping to keep the book love going. And I so appreciate that because books are magic and they open so many worlds. And so I'm grateful to all of you who came. And thank you, Stephanie, for everything you do to put our work out there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I will echo that and say, listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of KidLit Love. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.